What if I told you one of the greatest point guards in NBA history didn't walk off the court to a standing ovation, but quietly, months after being benched, sent home, and traded? This is the story of how Chris Paul's 21-year NBA career ended. Not with confetti, not with a farewell tour, but with tension, silence, and unanswered questions inside the Los Angeles Clippers organization. And trust me, what he revealed on Carmelo Anthony's podcast changes how we see this entire situation. Because this wasn't just about basketball. This was about respect, communication, and legacy. Chris Paul officially retired after being released by the Toronto Raptors. On paper, that's the ending. But in reality, his final chapter happened months earlier with the Los Angeles Clippers, the franchise where he built part of his Hall of Fame legacy. The team signed him for what was supposed to be a poetic final season. A homecoming, a reunion, a chance to close the book where it all once flourished. Instead, that story unraveled fast. Benched, sent home, traded. And just like that, one of the smartest minds in basketball was out of the picture. When Paul appeared on Carmelo Anthony's 7 p.m. in Brooklyn podcast, he didn't scream. He didn't attack. But he told his truth. And the tone of his words painted something deeper than a normal basketball disagreement. According to Paul, before the season even started, he personally reached out to head coach Tyronn Lue and president of basketball operations Lawrence Frank. He made it clear he wanted to finish his career in Los Angeles. He wasn't chasing stats. He wasn't chasing spotlight. He wanted closure near his family in the city he helped elevate. Think about that for a second. A 5-time All-Star with the Clippers, a franchise cornerstone during the Lob City era, a player who changed the perception of the organization, coming back not to dominate, but to support. Nobody expected vintage Chris Paul numbers. This wasn't about 20 points and 10 assists. It was about leadership, depth at point guard, veteran presence in a locker room filled with talent. It was supposed to be mentorship meets legacy, a bridge between eras. And at first, everything seemed to be going according to plan. In fact, Paul revealed something that makes what happened next even more shocking. Earlier in the season, Lawrence Frank sent him an article praising his leadership, not just casually mentioning it, but personally texting it to him. "Man, this is great leadership right here," Frank reportedly said. "That matters. That's validation from the top of the organization. That's a signal that you're valued, not just as a player, but as a culture setter." So how do you go from being praised for leadership to being benched and sent home? That's where the story shifts. Reports started surfacing about communication issues between Paul and head coach Tyronn Lue. Rumors suggested they clashed over Paul giving guidance to teammates. By the end, some reports even claimed the two weren't speaking. Lue has denied parts of that narrative. But when Paul spoke about it, he confirmed something critical. There are definitely tensions behind closed doors. During training camp, Paul said he was talking with a teammate, just having a normal conversation. Later, someone from the organization approached him and told him they didn't want him giving players advice. Let that sink in. A 21-year veteran, one of the highest basketball IQ players of his generation, being told not to advise younger teammates. Paul's response? "You were my assistant coach. I know you." That line hits differently. It suggests history. It suggests familiarity. And maybe it suggests frustration. Tyronn Lue, remember, was once an assistant coach during Paul's first stint with the Clippers. They go way back, which makes this even more layered. This wasn't strangers clashing. This was professionals with shared history. But somewhere along the way, communication broke down. And in professional sports, when communication fails, relationships unravel fast. The question becomes, was this about ego, authority, or simply a misunderstanding that snowballed into something bigger than it needed to be? Then came the moment that might define this entire saga. Paul revealed that Lawrence Frank told him his jersey number should be retired by the Clippers. That's not a small statement. That's legacy talk. That's forever talk. But here's the twist. Frank said that before telling Paul to go home. Imagine hearing your number deserves to hang in the rafters and then being shown the door. That emotional whiplash is real. Before leaving the room, Paul said he asked Frank about setting up a meeting with Tyronn Lue. He wanted to talk, clear the air, have a conversation. According to Paul, Frank responded, "I'm sorry, I couldn't do that. Go home." That's heavy. No final meeting. No closure. Just silence and distance. For a player who prides himself on communication and leadership, that ending feels unresolved. And let's be clear, Chris Paul's second tenure with the Clippers did not mirror the magic of his first. The numbers weren't eye-popping. His role was smaller. But impact isn't always measured in points and assists. It's measured in locker room tone, in film sessions, in late-game composure. His stat line in what became his final NBA season was modest, but his basketball mind never declined. That's why this story isn't about performance. It's about alignment. After he was sent home, the Clippers eventually traded him to Toronto. And just like that, the reunion chapter closed quietly. No dramatic farewell game in Los Angeles. No emotional send-off in front of fans who once chanted his name. Just a transaction line on a sports app. For a player of his caliber, that's a cold ending. And fans noticed. When Paul officially announced his retirement, the Clippers did post a tribute video that suggests there's at least some willingness from the organization to honor what he meant to them historically. But relationships aren't repaired with highlight reels alone. Trust takes conversation. And based on Paul's own words, that conversation never happened. Now the big question, will the Clippers retire his number? On paper, it makes sense. Chris Paul helped redefine the franchise. He brought relevance, playoff runs, national attention. But emotionally, that decision becomes complicated when the final chapter ended with tension. It's hard to celebrate legacy while ignoring how things concluded. From Paul's perspective, you can understand keeping some distance. When you feel unheard, when communication breaks down, when your role shifts without clarity, that lingers. And while he never sounded bitter, there was a calm honesty in his words. Sometimes that's louder than anger. This entire situation is a reminder that professional sports are still human businesses. Behind every trade, every benching, every basketball decision, there are conversations, or the lack of them, that shape how careers end. Chris Paul didn't need one more season to validate his greatness, but maybe he deserved a smoother goodbye. And now, as the curtain closes on a 21-year career, we're left with a complex ending. A Hall of Fame resume, a franchise legacy, a reunion that didn't last, and questions that may never fully be answered. One thing is certain, Chris Paul's impact on the game is permanent. But the way his story ended with the Clippers, that will be remembered just as long. Because sometimes it's not how you start. It's not even how you peak. It's how you finish. And in Chris Paul's case, the finish wasn't loud. It was layered, emotional, and unfinished.